Hey everybody, my name is Angie Murenga. You're watching Just Angie. It's another Thursday and we get to spend it together in conversation. And today we're going to talk about good versus God. Beryl has some thesis sermons for me to, things to chambua, some titles, but it's a very passionate conversation. So the whole idea is there are good things and then there's God things first of all. And then does God, that's such a pertinent question, does God cause bad things to happen to people? I think number one is no. God cannot cause bad. He cannot cause harm because it's not his nature. God is full of love. God is a father. And if you just think about it, would you cause harm to your children and to teach them a lesson? You can't do that. You know, I remember, I'm just thinking small things, like now when Althea was small and I would tell her, don't touch the cooker. When she touches it a bit, I just watch her. So when she touches it and her finger is on fire, she's like, yeah, now next time you'll not touch that. But that's not what God does, you know. He doesn't cause the bad to happen. But you may be training around a situation where you have refused to listen. So he will allow you to touch and taste that that was not the right thing to do. But he doesn't cause bad to happen. He doesn't cause disease to come upon people. He doesn't cause bad things to happen. And we have a defense in Job. We remember when Satan wanted to do something to Job, he wanted to attack Job. He had to go. It's amazing. That story says that when the angels were meeting God, even Satan was amongst them. Anyway, he was Lucifer. He used to be an angel. He was amongst them. And then he said, the only reason Job serves you is because you've put this hedge around him. So God said, okay, I allow you to go, remove everything, but you can't touch his life. So you can see that way God is not saying, He's not causing it to happen. The only person who can cause disaster and drama is the enemy. So God doesn't cause it. He may allow it, but he always has a plan to come around it. Several things come to mind. Every time he'd sent the Israelites to war with somebody else. First of all, I think there's a place he'd even get the enemy to rise up. He'd tell the Assyrians, go and attack those guys. Let me tell you, as soon as you're done attacking the Israelites, for whatever reason, maybe sometimes they'd backslide a lot. You know, they'd make promises. They'd say, God would give rules or maybe a strategy or an order. Say, I don't want this and this and this to happen. They would get off from that. Then the enemy would attack them. But the thing that always amazes me is that God would go after that enemy. And it's like the enemy has done, the Babylonians. What are the Babylonians? They do the work of God. They go. Then after that, God comes down on them in another manner. You're like, guy, please leave us alone to pay back for the Israelites. So with God, you can never win against him. I hope I haven't confused you, but you can never win against God. God has a plan. He has a plan for you. And it may look like sometimes the enemy is winning, but he's not winning. He can never win. His work is to kill, steal, and destroy if you allow him. But if you don't, there's nothing like that. Form a hedge of protection around you. How? You pray, you praise, you put yourself in the right atmospheres. But it brings me to another point where a lot of Christians say God is not answering. I told you there's a week when we did this Mentimeter that Mutua and Maxi taught us. And we were talking about venting. So you fill in a code, then you vent. And it's amazing. The question before that was, do you guys have anything to vent? And everybody was like, no, God has been so good. You see, pretending, lying. Watch how that thing was put there. And you're voting through your phone. What? People vented. And one of the things that came up that is so amazing is faith without results. So maybe you're out there praying and there've been no results. The only problem is you want the results in your time and in the way that you want them. Wait for God to come because he's coming through. And it brings me back to, and then in Genesis, he says, Genesis, I think 50:20, he says he's able to turn what was meant for harm into good. So whatever harm the enemy has caused in your life or in your generations, God is able to turn it into good. How? Even by beginning to speak that word. You can just begin to say, Father, whatever harm they meant, you can turn it into good. You can begin to make that confession because you have knowledge about that confession. And two stories come to mind for me. One is when my dad had his accident. My dad, I always remember the day. I remember when he was walking down the stairs. I remember I met him on the stairs, and then he went, and then he had his accident. And so life really changed. He was on a wheelchair. He's been on a wheelchair for many years. I think almost 40 now. But the good picture is that the other day we had an 80th birthday celebration. So we were able to celebrate him. And I said, every time I go to complain, I say, God, why is my dad not walking? I've prayed for him. And I keep praying that prayer in faith. I will never stop praying it. Never. I will continue to pray it. Why? Because that's my faith. That's what I believe. I believe that there are stories in the Bible where Jesus healed people who were paralyzed. So I must continuously work my faith and continuously pray for him. Maybe when he rolls his eyes, he's like, this child, but it's okay. Me, my work, is faith. We're moving with Jesus. But the one thing that I love about my dad's story is that if he had died that day in 1982, we would have no dad. I mean, the experiences we have had with my dad, he has attended, I said, all our weddings. He loves our children. There's even a time when they were young, I don't know where he attempts to take them out for fast food. He has traveled. He doesn't travel so much now, but he used to travel even on his own, even in the wheelchair. What I love about my dad is he just dares. You can't put him down. And every time I get discouraged, I remember him. My dad refuses to be put down. So even when he was younger, he would take flights. There's even one he did by himself. I don't even remember how that happened, but he would do the flights by himself. He brought in parts to be able to drive his own car. I think he only did that for a season. But he's been there, he's lived life. He's built businesses, he's built legacies, he's built buildings. He's given us homes to live in. I mean, he's done so much. Sometimes when I reflected, I say, if he wasn't here, who would have done this for us? So at least Dad is here. He's here. He's paralyzed, but he's here. So God was able to take something that the enemy meant for harm and turn it into good. That this man would have experiences with his children, experiences with life. He continued being an MD of an organization for another 8 years. I mean, he did so many things. He's lived life and it's been a rich life. I made him write a book the other day, tried to put his thoughts together. We haven't even finished it. But even when I read it, I was amazed. Things that I didn't know, about his life and the choices that he had to make and the places where God has really blessed him, which is important. If you're out there, write a book. Write a book. We need to know you. You see, what I love about that book is that our children's children will know their grandfather because of that book. They'll know what he stood for. They'll know his values. They'll know what kind of man he was. The other thing is for me, that's where they talk about turning pain into purpose or turning a message, turning your pain into a message and turning it into purpose. For me, I believe that. For me, I think the tragedy was my marriage ended. But when I look back now, it was a lot of my own fault and a lot of a lack of knowledge, a lack of forethought, a lot of even knowing what marriage is about. But my marriage ended. But from that has developed a passion and a ministry to support people in marriage, to promote marriage and family, to cause people to remain together as much as they can, to minister, to counsel. I mean, I'm passionate about marriage and family, even without knowing that I'm called to leadership. But you see, you can't lead a society that is not strong. Every society's strength is in family. Every society's strength is in those marriages working. That's why day and night we must pray against adultery, fornication, and we're going to continue. And it is going to stop because we need strong marriages. We need strong families. We need people who have been schooled right, who have been trained right, who have been modeled right, who have peace because they have a family. That is very, very key. And some of you out there saying, okay, but that can't happen for me. Yes, it can. People find, even me within the ministry, people call me mom. Why? They found a mom. They found a parent. So parenting can happen. If it didn't happen in the context of a family, it can happen outside the context of a family as we know it. Even Jesus Christ said, this is my family. My family is my brothers and my sisters. I love even that we have a KBS PLF family. We really are a family. So in that family, you'll find the things that you didn't get. So if it's a church or an organization or even a book club, people who are mentoring you, coaching you, you can find family wherever. Whatever you didn't get, you can get. Whatever is not available to you, it is possible to get it. But sometimes also the onus has to be on us. If you sit there and you say, I wasn't fathered right, or my father was not there, or my father passed on, or my mother passed on, then get up and find somebody and say, I want you to mentor, coach, and guide me. And be ready. Be ready for lessons. Be ready to be rebuked. Be ready to be loved. All that, even the rebuke is love. But be ready for everything, but take steps towards it. I think the other one I was going to say as well, in terms of good and God, is that, like for me, I've been very deliberate, both me and my ex-husband, been very deliberate in how we bring up our child. Been very deliberate that everything has to work for this child, because for us it didn't work, and keep our business away from her and be there for her. Call her, counsel her, train her, go take her on holiday, walk with her, model with her, speak to her, just so whatever. If the situation is a bad now, you've got to make the best. There's even a song of the bad situation. You've got to make the best of that situation. What's best? How can we do best? How can we term this that was meant to harm us or is knocking the sales out of us? How do we make good come out of this. And then you're deliberate about it, intentional about it, and that's good. Like even for out there, every day I tell her marriage is the best thing that ever happened. And my work is to pray for her every day that marriage will work. She'll meet the right person, pray the right scriptures, pray everything so that that marriage works, and promote it. And I'm not going around telling her how marriage is bad. That's not it. So turning whatever pain you're feeling, turning it into a message, into purpose that can help other people. So it's not just pain. It's not just pain. And then go to Genesis 50:20. If you need to quote that scripture, if you need to pray that scripture, if you need to ask God to turn what was meant for harm into good, then begin to do that daily. Begin to confess it and begin steps towards turning around what the enemy tried to work against you, and that God wants to work for your good. And don't say that God doesn't answer prayers. Maybe you need to reflect a bit. Maybe you need to be quiet a bit and see how he has answered it. Maybe in a roundabout way he has answered it. And I'm always saying the key word in anything is process. He has to process you through the process. I'm thinking of Joseph. When Joseph was imprisoned he was wrongly accused of attacking Potiphar's wife. I can imagine the depression, because I would feel that, One day I went to Langata Women's Prison and I had the prison door shut behind me. It's the guy, I'm visiting, because that thing shook me to the core. So imagine Joseph has done the right thing. And then imagine Joseph is imprisoned. I mean, how sad was that man? I mean, just reflect on how sad he must have felt. He'd made all the right choices all his life. But look at where he was once again. But it wasn't forever. That's the problem. You don't know the end of the story. I can assure you the end of the story is going to be bright and beautiful and amazing. Absolutely amazing is the end of the story. But not right now how you would. Because now Joseph went to prison for 2 years. He had to go there. Then Kumbe, he didn't know he was going to meet his destiny helpers. You see now, you are there complaining and God is working out situations for you to meet your destiny helpers. He met his destiny helpers. He met the cupbearer and I think the baker. And one of them was reinstated back in their position. Remember Joseph? And there we were. Joseph next was a leader. So just be patient. Be patient in the process. And today is the 17th. 17 is the number of victory. You need to go and play, because of that song by Todd Delaney, Victory Belongs to Jesus. Play it loud and say, you know what? There'll be victory. And I think the other thing I want to say as I end is, I remember one Easter, I posted and I said, winning, you can win through losing. Something like that. What did I say? Something about losing, that you can, you win, but you look like, to the world, it seems like you're losing. Because Jesus Christ, when he was hung on the cross, it seemed like the biggest loss that ever happened. Because now their Savior, who had been telling them all sorts of stories, they had been following him, he had been teaching them, he had been modeling to them, he had been speaking very loudly, saying he would redo in the temple, build it up in 3 days, he had been speaking. Now this man was reduced to nothing. He was on the cross. He was reduced to nothing. But that was the biggest victory ever. I always say, and a lot of teachers of the word also say, if Satan knew the kind of victory that cross was going to bring, he'd have sent bodyguards for Jesus. He'd be the one, chief bodyguard, protecting him, because he didn't understand that now there was beyond the cross, that when that death happened, hey, that was it. And we're never going back. The whole of humanity was reconciled back to God. We found a way to go back to God, and that was the biggest part. So it seemed like a loss, but spiritually it was the biggest win that has ever been had on this earth. So why don't you also spend the time reflecting on what you think is a loss that God is turning into a victory? God bless you. Bye-bye. See you on Sunday.